So fall is whiskey drinking season, and as such, a lot of the biggest distilleries in the world release a lot of cool, limited edition, hard-to-find whiskeys around fall. Today we're going to taste 5 of the best ones. So the 5 we're tasting today are Weller's Foolproof, I can't see it, are Weller's Foolproof, Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, Ardbeg's new 19-year-old offering, E.H. Taylor's Amaranth Bottle and Bond, and Four Roses Limited Edition 2019. I think we're going to start with the Four Roses. This is probably the one that is sort of like the sleeper hit, I guess, of this collection.
Sleeper hit?
The sleeper.
Oh, I think it's sleep.
Not the sleek hit.
Good.
The sleeper hit. It is filled with some of the oldest bourbon, or actually the oldest bourbon Four Roses ever made bourbon with, 21 years old, as well as a few other blends of 11 and 15 years old. What Four Roses represents and what this bourbon represents is sort of this like commitment to doing things better for longer. This is one of those whiskeys that at the end of the year, when all the everyone's articles are coming out, the spirit competitions and whatnot are happening, this is going to be the one that is near the top of everyone's list as far as best whiskeys, best bourbons of the year. It's won, actually, I believe this specific batch, which releases annually, has won Whiskey of the Year at various awards, including World Whiskies Award within the last year or two alone. Double gold at San Francisco Spirits. It is perennially one of the best releases of the year.
This is like a weapon.
So
this barrel strength, it's 56.3
That works.
ABV. That's powerful.
Yeah, so
That works.
So for Four Roses, it's the 56 ABV, or roughly 112 proof. Means it's a little spicy on the
not
first
for
sip.
kids.
A little
Great,
spicy
though.
on the first
Yeah.
sip. But for them, this is very high proof. Most of their stuff, apart from Small Batch Select, which came out earlier this year, is going to be in the 90s, much more palatable on first sip. It's not going to have that little a quick sharp burn in the back of your mouth.
Yeah.
What you're going to find is, especially with bourbon that has this much age on it, as the first sip, especially because it has all that oaky, tanniny flavor, it's going to be really astringent and really sort of a little heated in the back.
Yeah.
The second and third and fourth and so on, you'll notice it like completely mellows out as it kind of has coated your mouth.
Once you've just burned off all the feeling on your
Right.
tongue.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the 6, 7, 8,
Precisely.
you just don't taste anything. There are 3 different years in one. What is this? OESV.
Yeah, so this is my favorite thing about Four Roses. This is like the reason why it's become like the whiskey nerds whiskey maker is because they use they have this technique where they have 2 mash bills. So mash bill's a recipe. Your balance of corn, rye, barley, etc. They have 2 mash bills and they have 5 yeast strains. So all these little numbers on the front where you have OESV, OESK, OBSV, those are all mixes of mash bills and yeast strains. So the yeast strains are supposed to sort of highlight specific flavors in whiskey. So maybe fruity, maybe spicy, maybe earthy, so on and so forth, peanutty. And then the mash bills themselves, they have a low rye and a high rye mash bill. So they have this sort of like flexibility and variability where they can play with age and mash bill and yeast strain and all those 3 things together, of course, with all the other variables in whiskey making, make it kind of like wildly different batch to batch, despite using what is essentially the same whiskey.
Right.
Depending how they mix it.
Yeah.
The first thing that struck me is, so I like drinking, I like bourbon more than I like most other things in life.
Right,
I like
right.
I like to drink bourbon, but I'm used to sort of like a middle of the road, easier drinking thing. So this is the astringent quality, not only in the taste but in the smell. It comes off like rocket fuel.
Right.
And it sort of tastes like it instantly, but then right afterwards it mellows out.
Yeah.
It warms up, like you were saying.
It is. I get like a lot more caramel and a lot more sort of like rich, buttery, butterscotchy type flavor once you've actually settled a little bit. I think with any whiskey that is like above 100 proof, especially when you get to 110s, 112s, the first sip will be one that you're not sitting there like, I'm touching on the marzipan and tobacco flavors. Like, no, you're touching on mostly ethanol on your first sip, because your mouth is not sort of like, you're basically numbing some of those.
I was gonna say that's what
Wow.
you're doing.
So you got to acclimate your mouth.
Yeah, a little bit, especially with high proof stuff. Lower proof things, like the standard Four Roses offerings in the 90s, not as much. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could drink this for a while, definitely.
So the next one we're gonna try is Weller Foolproof. Weller is, if you don't know it, that probably means you're not like deep in the throes of your sort of like whiskey geekdom. It has become in the last few years kind of like a whiskey hype beast obsession, and it's driven prices up and whatnot. This is the first new permanent Weller in many years. Full proof, meaning it is straight from the barrel proof. It's very high alcohol. This is going to be 114 proof. So a little bit higher than our first one, so 57 and a half. The big thing with Weller, and the reason why it's sort of garnered crazy hype around it, is its mash bill is shared, so its recipe is shared with the Pappy Van Winkle family.
Interesting.
So it's related to.
So it's made with the exact same recipe as Pappy, which is a wheated mash bill. So essentially, you replace rye with wheat. The result is a whiskey that can be a lot sweeter. It can sort of exhibit qualities, especially with higher age, like like some of your typical Pappies, your 10s, your 15s, your 20s. The whiskey itself, rye is what gives a lot of whiskey its spice. So this will be a little bit different.
Yeah, this smells like caramel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Was that a thought or like a?
Yeah, seriously.
This is so good.
That's fighting whiskey.
It tastes like candy. I mean, it's like a straight up candy taste.
Yeah, and it's a non-age statement bourbon, so this just means that there's not an official designation how long it aged in a barrel. We can assume, given most Weller, most Weller is 8 to 12. It's probably in there, maybe a little bit higher. They don't disclose that. That said, if it were younger, we would be able to tell. You would get a lot more because wheat is wheat and not rye. It can be when not aged long enough, it can exhibit a lot of like more grassy quality, a lot more vegetal quality, rather than this like really powerful, like sweet, almost like syrupy. Like this, it tastes like a dessert.
That's what I was going to say.
It is syrupy. Like I'd put this on pancakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Evening
I thought you were going to
pancakes.
say
I have
something
a
insightful.
question.
Yeah.
But first, I just want to make it very clear that every time I think of this brand, I think of Peter Weller, who played RoboCop.
RoboCop, yeah. I was thinking that too, actually.
Citizen.
I hope that inspires good memories. This bottle came out this year. It'll be released annually around this time, sort of fall time. Retails for $50, so that sounds really nice.
Oh,
However,
okay.
if you do find it for $50, I urge you to buy as many as you can, because I doubt they will remain on the shelf for long. This is something that, just given the people and the chatter around it, this is probably the most anticipated new launch of the year in whiskey. So buy it if you find it, under $100.
And
it tastes good, and everybody else is going to want it.
And bring it to our,
Yeah, and
come
bring
over
it.
and share.
Yep.
Is it safe to say that some whiskeys are well aged and this is Weller aged?
I think we should move on from that one.
Wow.
The next whiskey we're going to talk about is A.H. Taylor's Amaranth Bottled and Bond. So A.H. Taylor, under the Buffalo Trace family, all of their bourbons and whiskeys are going to be bottled and bond. That means they're all going to be at 100 proof. That means they're all going to be at least 4 years old. Made in one distillation season, all the things that go along with the Bottled and Bond Act, which is just, basically late 1800s decided that, the government was like, okay, we need people to not make crap whiskey, so this is how you do it. You can get bottle and bond labeling. So A.H. Taylor has a lot of whiskeys under their name. They have, they're most popular for their small batch, their single barrel, and their straight rye. They also do some more experimental stuff at Buffalo Trace. This is sort of epitomizes that. This is a whiskey that uses 4 grains, one of them being amaranth. This is going to be the first whiskey that you have tried, and I can say this with confidence because it's the first whiskey that has been made with amaranth in it. So when you nose it, the color, everything about it, it's not purple. There's nothing strange about how it looks. But when you nose it, you will immediately tell there's something different about it. And I'm not going to tell you what I think it smells like, but there's a very specific hit that I think you can pull from it.
Word association with purple, what do you get?
I wish I didn't say purple. It's a big mistake on my part.
Oh, so that was a hint.
Purple.
You know what it is?
No.
What you'll get on the nose largely is this almost cherry-like smell.
Oh, yeah.
So-
I mean, it could just be that my mouth is numb, but it's not as harsh.
No, I don't think it's a source at all. I think beyond like the cherry in the nose and a little bit, on the palate itself, there's also like kind of like a minty, like herb flavor happening a little bit.
Yeah. I get the medicinal thing.
Yeah. It almost
Yeah.
it has like this like I want to put it on ice cream vibe that I love. I love a lot.
Right. It's kind of like it harkens to sort of like a Fernet or something that
Yeah.
has that herbal sort of.
Yeah. HTR Amaranth is going to retail at $70. It is available now. Technically, that said, it's been out for a month or two. So if you do find it, it will be a small miracle. It's a pretty small run, and it's only going to come out this one time. It's the age. On top of that, it's also a little more than a decade aged. So that longer time in the barrel has a lot of people excited already. New ingredients, so on and so forth. So it'll be tougher to find, but well worth seeking out at $70 for sure. This is the last bourbon we're going to try. Old Forester. It's called Birthday Bourbon. Are either of you familiar with that?
Yeah.
To what extent? What do you know about it?
It's an annual release of a special limited edition.
Yeah.
And I don't know anymore, but I love.
Dang, dropping knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is an annual release. It is a limited special edition. It celebrates the birthday of the president, the original president of the Brown-Forman Corporation, Garvin Brown. There you go.
Oh,
Trivia up the
nice.
That's knowledge.
This is the
Cool.
This is the 17th release of Birthday Bourbon. It is the highest proof of the releases at 105 proof. So not extraordinarily high. Most of them are typically in the low hundreds. 10 years ago they would have been in the mid 90s and no one would have batted an eye. Old Forester bourbons are made with the same mash bill, so there's a variety of different bourbons they make. The difference is they basically play with the barrel type the whiskey is aged in, what part of the warehouse it's aged in. They play with the proof a little bit. This is an 11-year-old 105 proof, so it is actually pretty close to their Old Forester signature 100 proof, which is what everybody loves. Just aged, probably twice as long and proof a little bit, or not watered down quite as much.
What am I tasting? It's wild. It's very different from the others. There's a very strong taste of a thing. It's interesting. It's almost like mossy.
Yeah, there's sort of an earthy flavor to Old Forester. It's hard to, you don't want to like paint with too broad a brush and say like a distillery tastes like this and this one tastes like that. Old Forester, I think, can largely, a lot of their flavor profiles can lean herby and earthy, as well as sort of this candy-like sweetness in some products. This one I think leans definitely more into the earthy, herby kind of, and because it is aged, above 10 years. For a standard bourbon, it's going to be a little more woody, which means it's going to be a little more astringent. You kind of have that a little drying effect on your tongue. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the result of old whiskey. So the last thing we're drinking is something. It's kind of a treat. It's not bourbon. This is a single malt Scotch. This is from Ardbeg. The name of it is not pronounceable for me. I'm from Alabama. It is Traighban. Traighban? That's my best guess.
I think you get it out as quickly as possible. Yeah.
I'm gonna say Traighban.
Traighban.
Okay. This whiskey is
so
I think can be like aptly described as a peat bomb.
Peat bomb.
It is right when you open it. Right when you open it, you get this immediate, like, you can smell it. It's sort of
I
in the
love that
space.
peatiness. It's great.
This is also easily, or I shouldn't say easily, it's a 19-year-old Scotch whiskey. So for Scotch, it's even up there for Scotch, which exhibits older age statements. It is, if you're not acclimated to peat, it's going to be sort of a knock in the jaw. If you are acclimated, it's going to be like your favorite thing you've had.
That
in a
is
while.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's so intense.
Oh, I love that. I know it's a totally different category, but yeah. I love just like a charcoal fire in my mouth.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like strengthening my beard, just drinking this.
Yeah, there is.
I can see it growing.
Right? Can you? Yeah.
This is sort of one of those.
So good.
This is sort of one of those like Ron Swanson scotches. It doesn't like try to be anything that Ardbeg isn't. It's a high part per million peated malt scotch, single malt, so on and so forth. It's from Islay, if I remember correctly. Ardbeg is right down the street from Lagavulin. It's from the heart of Scotch country, and it tastes like it. This is a new, and the first addition to Ardbeg's permanent line in 20 years. It's a 19-year-old Scotch. It'll release around this time of the year every year for the next foreseeable future. It's going to retail at $300.
Nice.
So that is the price.
Okay.
That is the price for Yeah, excellent Scotch that's only going to come out, in limited quantities. But
Wow.
so we tried 5 of the fall's sort of most hyped, most talked about whiskeys. The first one was a Four Roses limited edition small batch. It's probably going to win some big award. It's sort of a Randy Johnson fastball down the middle as far as a bourbon goes. Really old, really delicious. Weller Full Proof. It's the highest proof Weller yet, made with the same mash bill or recipe as Pappy Van Winkle. Probably the most anticipated bourbon release of the year. Will be sold out very quickly. E.H. Taylor's Amaranth, it's a bottle and bond, 100 proof, over a decade aged. Uses a grain or a pseudo cereal called Amaranth that gives it some weird, unique sort of minty, cherry-like flavors that are sort of special unto itself. Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, which is always one of the most sought after releases year after year. This one's a little older and a little higher proof than most. And finally, threw a Scotch in the mix, Ardbeg's Traig Bon, 19-year-old Scotch. Peat Bomb.
I can't believe you referenced Randy Johnson.
That was great. Fastball straight down the middle.
Kills birds.
Seagull killer, yeah.
That's one of the best YouTube clips.